The NAACP's Office of General Counsel formally joined the legal team, led by Kristen Clark, former head of the Civil Rights Division at the United States Department of Justice. The analysis and interview you're about to hear lays out exactly what that means for the phone examination that still hasn't happened, for the grand jury timeline, for the friends whose stories don't line up, for Christine, who just wants to know what happened to her son. So I'm asking you, listen to this one all the way through.
Nolan Wells update. I'm so perplexed. I'm so confused. Is anybody else out there in TikTok world confused just like I'm confused? Because when did Nolan's family become the people who weren't part of the investigation? What? This family has gone through utter hell for the last 6 weeks plus. They've lost their son. Have zero answers, and somehow this has been perpetuated as if what is going on? Because the mom won't turn over the phone while she was on vacation, and because she specifically requested there be a third party mediator because of so many different suspicious circumstances behind her son's death. And y'all are perpetuating the narrative that she's non-compliant? I'm so confused. She said she'd give up the phone. She was on vacation. How do you formulate and change the narrative as the mom is guilty of hindering justice? Why would she be guilty? She wants answers. This is so preposterous and so far gone that it's absurd. It's absurd. My heart goes out to the Wells family, Nolan Wells' mom, Christine Walmsley Wells, and the father and the other siblings that are still remaining on earth that have to still endure the social media rhetoric and BS. This woman has been through hell. Her job has been attacked. Her character has been attacked. This is completely outrageous that anyone would think that continuing to spin this narrative and cause this woman any more grief is absurd.
Release between Nolan's mom and Warren that can answer a lot of questions. And I need you to, I'm going to go through these text messages one by one. You tell me, does it look like somebody like Warren is trying to hide something, or does it look like he's being a true friend? Now, first of all, I thought that Nolan's dad showed up unannounced as the way, Warren and them told the story. Here's a text message, July 5th, 2 in the morning. Nolan's dad is out the house to pick up the key. Remember, he was trying to get the key from Jax. He said Jax couldn't find it, or it was taking forever. Then somebody else found it, and he didn't trust Jax after that. So then here's the next one. That day in the afternoon, hey Warren, what kind of sunglasses did Nolan wear? I'm pretty sure Ray-Bans, Mrs. Christine. This is Warren. Then Warren says, hey, Mrs. Christine, just wanted to check in. We went out this morning to look, and I've been on and off the phone with Jackson County Sheriff's Office today. If you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. She says, thank you. Warren says, we are all praying for your family. We appreciate it. Then it gets deeper. Now, right here, she asked Warren what boat he was on, or what boat Nolan was on. He says, Nolan went out on the 22 Triton offshore, and I was on the 24 Tide Line. I ain't heard much about the 24 Tide Line. On the way out, we were on separate boats. I went back on the Triton DMR, and the sheriff's office has all this information. Then if you look again, Monday, July 6th, 1:37 p.m., hey, Warren, can you collect any of Nolan's items left at Jack's house? So it was still items after her father went there? I don't know. Then here's Warren again. Good morning, Miss Christine. I just wanted to let you know that my family and I have been praying for you and your family. Nolan was one of my best friends since we were in 8th grade together. You and Mr. Elmore raised one of the best men I've ever met. I wish I could be there today, but I would never want to take the attention off of your family and Nolan and be a distraction. Thank you for being the best parents that Nolan could have had. This was the day of the funeral, that Monday. Now, these are cut off. I want to know the full message up here, because this is where it seemed like it got a little spicy. It appears Miss Christine, Nolan's mom, said exactly where you saw him last. I'm sorry, I am asking you to repeat this. 3 p.m. West Tip, north side of Horn Island. Where did you guys launch from? He sent the location, and I don't know why this is blurred out. We launched the boats yesterday evening and left from here this morning. As the Wells family searches for answers and warning them, trying to say that they had nothing to do with it and don't know anything, we are trying to find out what is true. But we do know a lot has been misinformed, a lot of misinformation, and I don't like it.
It's absurd.
Christine, all I'm gonna say is keep your eyes on that phone. Cause apparently the whole state of Mississippi want to get a hold of that phone, cause we already know them boys, folks are in the higher ups in that government. So they probably know a good bit of people that want to get a hold of that phone and play in your face. So if everybody cool, I keep my eyes on it, or got some real people you can trust to keep your eyes on that phone. Because if they all want a hold of it, it's apparent there's still something on that phone that's still gonna open this wide open. They have a smoking gun. And that's what's gonna give it up even more. The jig's already up, but it's gonna be more oil in the fire. Just what?
News, and I'm sure it's going to burn quite a you devils right on up. The NAACP's Office of General Counsel is joining the legal team focused on the death of Nolan Wells because truth, justice, and accountability cannot wait. Nolan's family deserves answers, and we will continue fighting to ensure that no Black life is ever overlooked, dismissed, or denied thorough justice. Drawing on the association's long history of pushing for full and fair investigation when Black lives are lost under suspicious circumstances, we will bring additional investigation and legal resources to bear and ensure that no stone is left unturned and the quest for truth and accountability shall prevail in the death of Nolan Wells' case and to his family. Boom.
Right. Been this narrative that was put out there, and I think they're trying to knock it down, which I believe was unfairly put out, saying that the family was somehow stonewalling investigators. But according to the letter, if you read the letter that they released this morning, they said this is exactly what we agreed upon in July. And so, you know, I don't understand why this information has been put out there, and that's all part of the investigation. What do you make of that?
There's more time been spent on deflecting the fact that there has not been a thorough investigation that the public have trust and believe in. If there's been a thorough investigation, great. If there's a grand jury where information is going to be provided, that's great. But at this juncture, local officials should not be deflecting what's really taking place. We're talking about a state with a history of not valuing African-American life. We're talking about a state that spent more time worried about the perception of its past as opposed to reconciling the current reality and doing what's necessary. A child never returned home. A child got on a boat with a group of friends. A child phone came back with a friend, and that child, the next time we see the child, he's unalive. There are some questions that need to be answered. We have a sheriff who made assumptions before an investigation was done based on the words of the individuals that child was with. This should not be the case. There needs to be a complete thorough investigation.
How another major development in the Nolan Wells case to tell you about. The NAACP is officially joining the legal team representing Nolan Wells' family. Its Office of General Counsel will work alongside Ben Crump. They'll bring more legal muscle and investigative resources into this case. And the NAACP president, Derek Johnson, was exclusively on our show on Monday night, just after the announcement, talking about exactly why they're stepping in. Because let's be real for a moment. Nolan's parents have been fighting for answers for more than a month. They've asked for federal help, they pushed for more transparency, and they're ready this week for the joint forensic examination of Nolan's cell phone. So now the NAACP is in the room too. More lawyers, more resources, more pressure, and maybe that's what it's going to take. Nolan went to Horn Island with his friends. They came home. He did not. His parents want answers. And if you want to hear exactly what Derek Johnson told us, check out Monday Night's Live.
The examination was previously agreed upon by the parties during a July 15th meeting. At that time, attorneys said the plan called for a coordinated examination involving experts for both sides with possible FBI participation. The digital forensics lab at Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College had also been identified as a potential location. So there was an agreement, July 15th. Both sides experts in the room, possibly the FBI, a neutral lab, everything set up for a transparent, defensible process. However, according to the legal team, no date or time for that examination was ever set after the meeting. Weeks go by, nothing is scheduled, and then, instead of following through on the agreed plan, on August 12th at 12:51 p.m. Eastern Time, the district attorney's office sent a letter directing the family to deliver the phone to her office by 9 a.m. on August 14th, less than 48 hours later. Wells's parents were out of town when the letter was sent and weren't scheduled to return before the deadline. Now hold on, you agree to a joint forensic examination with both sides present, and then a month later you send a letter saying hand over the phone in 48 hours to your office while the family is out of state. Does that look like good faith? Or does that look like setting a deadline you know can't be met? So you can point a finger when it isn't? The family's legal team responded directly, saying setting a 48-hour deadline while this family was out of state is not a good faith path to answers, and it weakens our confidence in the process. Nolan's parents will not be pulled into a fight over deadlines and logistics. And then the family did something that should have ended this entire dispute. In an August 17th letter to Jackson County District Attorney Angel Myers McElrath, attorney Ahmad R. Smith asked the district attorney's office to select any time between Tuesday, August 18th and Friday, August 21st for the examination. The family requested at least 12 hours notice so its forensic experts can be present. They gave 4 days of availability. Any slot, 12 hours notice. Experts on standby. The family's legal team stated the family wants Nolan's phone examined right away with both parties in the room. All parties agreed on July 15th that we share the same goal, which is determining the circumstances surrounding Nolan's death. Notice this. The two sides have apparently not yet agreed on procedures for the examination, including chain of custody and access to the data. Chain of custody, access to the data. These are not small details. In any forensic investigation, if you lose chain of custody on a piece of evidence, a defense attorney can argue that evidence was tampered with. It becomes inadmissible. It becomes worthless. The family's legal team said, in order to preserve the evidence, they asked for a protocol, a chain of custody, and an agreement on what happens to the data. They have yet to receive these details. So when someone tells you the family won't hand over the phone, what the actual record shows is that the family has been asking for the same thing any competent attorney would demand, a process that protects the evidence. The dispute, based on the most recent statements, centers on the method and shared oversight of the examination rather than a flat refusal to hand the device over. That distinction matters, because if that phone gets examined without proper protocols and something is found, it could be challenged in court. And if something is missing, there's no way to prove it was there to begin with. Whether that phone contains answers or whether it raises more questions is one issue. Whether it's examined in a way that holds up in court, that's a completely separate issue. And right now, only the family's side appears to be insisting on both. Now let's talk about what's happening above the state level, because this case is no longer a local matter. It stopped being a local matter weeks ago. The Congressional Black Caucus is urging the Justice Department to launch an independent federal review into the disappearance and death of 18-year-old Nolan Wells. The CBC sent a letter on August 12th to Attorney General Todd Blanche and FBI Director Kash Patel requesting a federal assessment of the case and asking for a written response within 7 days. 7 days. They put a clock on it. The letter states, more than 30 days after his disappearance and death, significant questions remain unanswered. Lawmakers said federal involvement would not interfere with the state investigation, but could determine whether civil rights laws were implicated. And this isn't just members of Congress writing letters from Washington. Representative Lucy McBath, a Georgia Democrat, attended a press conference with Wells's family, their lawyer Ben Crump, and Reverend Al Sharpton at the National Association of Black Journalists Convention in Atlanta, where she said, "We're demanding a full federal investigation as to what has actually happened to Nolan Wells." Now here's context that makes McBath's presence even more significant. McBath lost her own teen son, Jordan Davis, in 2012 when he was shot by Michael Dunn in Florida over loud music. She is not a politician reading talking points. She is a mother who buried her child and then spent a decade turning that grief into legislation. Her standing next to Christine and Elmore Wansley, that's not performance. That's a mirror. In a statement to ABC News, the DOJ confirmed that it received the CBC's letter and is ensuring the appropriate personnel within the department are reviewing it carefully. Reviewing it carefully. Not committing. Not launching. Reviewing. Sharpton said during the news conference in Atlanta that Horn Island's status as federal property was another reason federal authorities should examine the case. And that's a point that keeps getting lost in the noise. Horn Island is part of the Gulf Islands National Seashore. It's federal land, managed by the National Park Service, which means there is a jurisdictional argument for federal involvement that exists independent of civil rights concerns. It's not either or, it's both. Now let me bring you to the financial support behind this family, because the scope of who has stepped forward tells you something about how this case is being perceived nationally. Tyler Perry agreed to pay for Wells' funeral. NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick paid for an independent autopsy to be done on Wells. Reverend Al Sharpton and Tyler Perry each pledged $50,000 for information leading to an arrest and conviction. Byron Allen donated $100,000 to the family's GoFundMe campaign. Whoopi Goldberg and Sonny Hostin both indicated there are potentially legitimate questions surrounding race because of the circumstances of his death and the history of Mississippi. And filmmaker Spike Lee has appeared publicly with Wells's family. This is not a local drowning case getting routine coverage. This is a case where some of the most prominent voices in Black America have looked at the available evidence, looked at the official response, and concluded that this family needs reinforcement. But here's where it gets even more layered. Because while all of this institutional and financial support is building from the outside, on TikTok, something else has been circulating that's added an entirely different kind of fuel. Leaked text messages between Nolan's mother, Christine, and his friend Warren Hudson. Now, I want to be very clear about what these messages show and what they don't. These texts have gone viral on TikTok. They've been dissected by thousands of users, and the details in them have raised serious questions about the timeline and the accounts given by the friends. According to what's been shared publicly, the messages include details about boat assignments, a 22 Triton and a 24 Tidewater. They reference Nolan's last known location, the west tip, north side of Horn Island at approximately 3 p.m., and they show that Warren made the decision not to attend Nolan's funeral. Think about that last part. Your friend is dead, his mother is burying him, and you choose not to be there. Now, is there an innocent explanation? Maybe. People grieve differently. Fear can keep people away. The case has been subject to misinformation, conspiracy theories, and harassment and threats directed at those involved in the event. Some of those connected with the case have received threats, which are being investigated by the FBI. Shepard stated that he and others he knows have received threats online, and Cole stated that she and her son had to delete their social media profiles. To be fair, that is real. Those threats are documented. The FBI is investigating them. But to the public watching this unfold, Warren's absence at that funeral sits heavy, especially when placed next to the text messages where he's providing Christine with specific details about boats and locations. He had enough of a relationship with this mother to text her directly. He had specific knowledge of where her son was last seen, and then he wasn't at the service. That contrast between access to information and absence at the funeral is what TikTok has locked onto. And while social media speculation is not evidence, the underlying questions are legitimate. Warren Hudson told Brandon Tatum on the Officer Tatum show that he last saw Nolan at 3 p.m. that day. but claims he talked to somebody personally who saw the teen at 6 p.m. on the island. Notice this. He says he saw Nolan at 3, but someone else he spoke to, unnamed, claims they saw Nolan at 6. Who is that person? Have investigators spoken to them? Has that claim been verified? Hudson also insists he and his friends weren't even the last people to see Nolan, alleging there were still dozens on dozens on dozens of boats around the island when they left. He said his friend group told Nolan to get on the boat when they were leaving, but he decided to hang back. But here's the contradiction that keeps surfacing. The girl Nolan was allegedly staying behind with told police he was planning to head back with his pals. So the friends say Nolan chose to stay. The girl says he planned to leave with them. Both can't be true. And that gap between what the friends said happened and what the one independent witness reportedly told police is the fracture line running through this entire case. We're going to come back to that. Because what happens next with that phone examination and whether the FBI steps in at the federal level could determine whether this fracture line becomes a fault line. But first, there's a piece of this that almost nobody is talking about, and it changes how you should be looking at everything. The piece almost nobody is talking about is the pattern. And I don't mean speculation. I mean documented, institutional, historical pattern. According to the NAACP's own statement, this concern is not unique to this case. They cited the CDC's National Violent Death Reporting System, published in 2022, which found that black males experience the highest rate of deaths classified as being of undetermined intent among males at 5.8 deaths per 100,000 population. Let me say that again more slowly. Deaths classified as undetermined intent. Not ruled a homicide, not ruled an accident, not ruled a suicide. Undetermined, meaning we don't know, meaning no one made a definitive call. And black males lead that category by a significant margin. The NAACP said this troubling disparity highlights why unanswered questions surrounding deaths involving young black men cannot be met with silence or delay. Now think about where we are right now in the Nolan Wells case. The autopsy's findings that Nolan Wells' manner of death remains undetermined. Crump already ordered an independent autopsy, and the preliminary results did not conclude a cause or manner of death. Undetermined. That word again. Not because the science is ambiguous, but because, according to the family's legal team, the investigation hasn't been thorough enough to give the science what it needs. And the NAACP, an organization that has litigated civil rights cases across this country for over a century, looked at that word undetermined in this state, Mississippi, and said we need to be in that room. Derek Johnson, the NAACP's president and CEO, said the world is watching and Nolan Wells' family deserves a thorough accounting of what happened. He also said the NAACP's involvement is part of its ongoing commitment to pursue answers with urgency and respect for Black lives. In a statement that speaks directly to the significance of this moment, Johnson said that officials need to be aware of how the case reflects on Mississippi. We want to find out what happened, he said. I hope our local elected officials, and the state understand the significance of the perception right now around the state of Mississippi. Notice this. He didn't say perception of the case. He said perception of the state. He's telling Mississippi itself, the world is watching how you handle this. And right now, what the world is seeing is delay. Now let me bring in the legal voice that shifts everything. Because this isn't just about moral pressure anymore. This is about what happens in a courtroom. Attorney Eric Hertz told NPR he believes the case could go before a grand jury in just under 30 days. He said that's based on the timeline of evidence he's seen. 30 days. He did not indicate who might be the subject of that review, but several of Wells's friends have retained high-profile lawyers in case of wrongful death suits and to potentially file defamation suits. Think about the mechanics of that for a second. The friends who were on that trip have not been named as suspects, they have not been charged with anything, but they've hired high-profile attorneys. Not just any attorneys, attorneys who handle wrongful death defense and defamation claims. Now, is it smart to lawyer up when a case goes national and threats are flying? Absolutely. The investigation has generated intense online speculation and threats against people connected to the case. 3 people have been federally charged in connection with alleged threats involving a judge, witness, and local officials tied to the investigation. To be fair, those threats are real. They're documented. People have been charged. That context matters. But the legal posture of the Friends, hiring attorneys who specialize in wrongful death defense and defamation, that tells you something about where they believe this is heading. You don't prepare for defamation suits unless you expect to be publicly named in connection with something serious. And you don't hire wrongful death defense counsel unless you think a wrongful death claim is coming. Whether those claims have merit, that's for a courtroom to decide. But the preparation itself is a signal. Now here's the part that brings this full circle, and it's the reason the Knox involvement changes the architecture of this entire case. Kristen Clark said, "We're taking up this fight to search for truth and transparency surrounding the death of Nolan Wells." She added that drawing on the association's long history of pushing for full and fair investigations when Black lives are lost under suspicious circumstances, they will help bring additional investigative resources to bear and work to ensure that no stone is left unturned. Additional investigative resources? That phrase sounds bureaucratic until you understand what it actually means. The NAACP has its own legal infrastructure, its own investigators, its own forensic consultants, its own relationships with federal agencies. When Clark says additional investigative resources, she's talking about a parallel track of scrutiny that exists outside the control of the Jackson County DA's office. This move adds institutional muscle to a family that has spent 6 weeks navigating conflicting accounts, disputes over Nolan's cell phone, hate mail, and an investigation that has yet to produce a cause or manner of death. 6 weeks, no cause of death, no manner of death, a phone that hasn't been examined, a DA's office that set a 48-hour deadline while the family was out of state, and friends whose accounts don't align with at least one independent witness. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's a summary of the documented record. And now, sitting on top of that record is the NAACP, the Congressional Black Caucus, Ben Crump, the possibility of FBI involvement, and a grand jury that could convene within a month. Remember earlier when I asked you to think about why every mechanism designed to move this investigation forward has stalled at the exact moments it mattered most? Here's why that question matters now more than ever. The district attorney, Angel Myers McElrath, responded to the mounting pressure by saying, "With all of the public pressure being placed on my office, filling the void would only serve to get pressure off of me. Nolan deserves better. There is no pressure that can be placed on me and no force that is greater than the weight of the oath I took and my responsibility to the people I serve." Now, on its face, that sounds like a DA who is committed to doing the right thing regardless of outside noise. And maybe it is. Maybe this DA is going to deliver a thorough, impartial investigation and present it to a grand jury with full transparency. But the family isn't asking the DA to cave to pressure. The family's own words are, the family wants Nolan's phone examined right away, with both parties in the room. All parties agreed on July 15th that we share the same goal, which is determining the circumstances surrounding Nolan's death. End quote. That's not pressure. That's compliance with an agreement that already exists. Ben Crump and the legal team announced the family is prepared to make his phone immediately available for the joint forensic examination. According to Crump, both parties agreed to the examination on July 15th. He said the family's forensic experts are on standby to conduct that examination any day this week. The family is ready. Their experts are on standby. They've offered 4 days of availability with 12 hours notice. Attorney Liza Park, who works with Ben Crump's office, told reporters, "We are waiting for the DA to determine the time, the place, the date. Let us know, and we are going to be there with our forensics team and anybody else. But it's done one time, one examination. We're ready for it to happen." One time, one examination. Both sides present. That's what the family is asking for. So the question becomes, if both sides agreed to this process on July 15th, and the family has offered to make the phone available any day this week, why hasn't it happened yet? What would you have done if you were sitting in that room? Because right now, every day that phone goes unexamined is a day where data could degrade, where battery drain could affect recoverable information, where the window for extracting location data, messages, app activity narrows. Digital forensic experts will tell you time is not neutral when it comes to phone evidence. The sooner you image a device, the more complete the picture. Delay doesn't preserve evidence. Delay erodes it, and both sides know that. Now let's talk about what this family is actually asking for, because it's important to hear it from them, not from the attorneys. Not from the organizations, from them. Wells's mother, Christine Wansley, said the family's goal has not changed. Only thing we want to know is what happened, she said. Only thing we want to know is what happened. That's it. That's the whole ask. Not a predetermined verdict, not a conviction, not revenge, just what happened. Crump announced that the family wanted to hold a national day of prayer for Nolan Wells on August 19th, which would have been his 19th birthday. Speaking to reporters, Christine Wansley said his loss is getting harder for her as his birthday approaches. Today, as you're watching this, or close to it, would have been Nolan's 19th birthday. 19, he should be starting his sophomore year. He should be on a football field somewhere. He should be making his mother roll her eyes at something ridiculous he said. He should be alive. Instead, his mother is fighting for a phone examination, fighting for chain of custody, fighting for someone to tell her what happened to her son on that island. And now the question of what the legal landscape actually looks like. Because I want to make sure you understand exactly where things stand, not where people want them to stand, where they actually stand. No one has been charged in Wells' death. That's the baseline. No charges, no arrests, no named suspects. The Jackson County District Attorney's Office has previously said it will present the case to a grand jury once the local sheriff's department investigation into Wells' death is complete. The DA's office said convening a grand jury does not mean there is any criminality and is standard procedure for most unnatural or suspicious deaths in the county. Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter has said there was no initial indication of a crime, but he stressed that investigators were working diligently to determine exactly what occurred. He told ABC News last month, Nolan Wells' family deserves a thorough and factual investigation, and that's exactly what they're going to get. So the sheriff says no initial indication of a crime. The DA says grand jury is standard procedure. The family says the investigation has been inadequate. The NAACP says local officials have been derelict. The Congressional Black Caucus has asked the DOJ to step in, and an attorney connected to the case believes it could be in front of a grand jury within 30 days. All of those things are true simultaneously. And that tension between what local authorities are saying and what everyone around them is demanding is the defining feature of where this case sits right now. The NAACP's involvement underscores how Wells' death has evolved from a local investigation into a case drawing national scrutiny. It's no longer a question of whether people are paying attention. The question is whether the institutions responsible for answering this family's questions will do so before the institutions above them force the issue. Because that's what's happening. The NAACP didn't join this case to observe. The Congressional Black Caucus didn't write that letter to make a suggestion, and Kristen Clark didn't leave her position at the DOJ to stand on the sidelines of an investigation she once would have had the authority to open herself. The architecture of accountability around this case has changed permanently. Whether local officials recognize that shift or continue to treat this as a routine investigation may determine whether the answers come from Jackson County or from Washington. And we come back to where we started. Nolan Wells, 18 years old. A young man who went to an island with people he trusted and never came home. His mother, Christine, said it simply. Only thing we want to know is what happened. That question sits at the center of everything. The phone that hasn't been examined. The accounts that don't align. The investigation that hasn't produced a cause of death in 6 weeks. The national organizations that looked at this case and said, we need to be in that room. This is not just about what happened on Horn Island. This is about whether the systems that are supposed to deliver answers will work for this family the way they're supposed to work for everyone. We'll keep following this case until there are real answers. If this coverage mattered to you, subscribe so you don't miss the next update. Because this story is far from over. And And the next 30 days could change everything. Now that you've heard the full scope of what's developing, from the Knox formal entry into this case, to the phone dispute, to the grand jury timeline, what stands out to you most? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one.